Now this is a curse. The curse of the Pottsville Maroons. Who are the Pottsville Maroons, you ask? Well, my boy, you're talking about one of the oldest franchises in NFL history. A century ago, the NFL consisted of many teams that have long since been defunct. One of those was the Maroons, who played in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, the same city famous for Yingling, a true American beer. The Maroons were an independent team that had operated since 1920, and then they were in a short-lived minor league for a year. But in 1925, they joined the still very primitive National Football League, and in that 1925 season, the Pottsville Maroons were dominant and easily the best team in the league, with their final game being a win against the Chicago Cardinals. Yes, that's the Cardinals. The Maroons finished with a 10-2 record, and since the NFL championship was automatically awarded to the team with the best record, it seemed guaranteed that Pottsville would be taking home the chip. However, what instead would follow would be one of the most controversial moments in early NFL lore. You see, while the scheduled season was technically over, the championship had yet to be awarded. There was an open window where, if they liked, teams could still schedule more games for a few more weeks in order to bring in more revenue or pad their record, and that's what a lot of them did. Now, since Pottsville had been the best team, they also earned the right to host the Notre Dame All-Stars, which was seen as a huge opportunity, as college football was actually more prestigious than professional football at this point. This Fighting Irish team also had the famed Four Horsemen. However, a game this big needed a more sizable stadium than the high school one Pottsville played in, so they instead would schedule to play it at a larger stadium in nearby Philadelphia. There was a problem with this though. Philadelphia was the territory of another NFL franchise, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, who are the predecessors to the Eagles. Now, the Yellow Jacks were not having this. They felt Pottsville was infringing on their territorial rights and would be drawing away attendance from their own game, scheduled around the same time. So they complained to the league commissioner. Frankfurt was also extra salty because they had originally planned on playing Notre Dame earlier that season when it looked like they would be the champion. But those plans would be thwarted by the Maroons' dominant end to the season. Ultimately, the NFL sided with Frankfurt in this case and repeatedly warned Pottsville that they would be suspended from the league and fined if they went ahead with the game. Now, the Maroons claim that they did actually get verbal permission from the league over the phone to play, but it's not really clear what all was said between the two parties, or who they even talked to. Regardless, the Maroons felt they could not pass up this opportunity to play the game in a larger stadium, bringing in more fans and more money, so they went ahead with the game. They won it too, which was quite an impressive feat at that time, although they didn't draw quite the large crowd they were hoping for. That was overshadowed though by the problem now facing Pottsville, because as promised, the Maroons would be suspended from the NFL, meaning they were now ineligible to receive the championship. They were also prohibited from playing their remaining scheduled game against the NFL's Providence Steamroller, with the Yellow Jackets actually sneaking in and taking their spot. Meanwhile, the Chicago Cardinals, who were the second best team that year, hastily scrambled together 2 more games to play against 2 teams that had already disbanded for the season. One of these would have a pretty significant controversy of its own, as a Cardinals player would hire high school players to suit up under aliases for the opposing team, the Milwaukee Badgers. This allowed the Badgers to fill out their depleted, disbanded roster, and for the Cardinals to get an easy win, which they did, 58-0. With their 2 victories to close out the season, and with Pottsville's suspension, the Chicago Cardinals now had the best record in the NFL. Obviously though, they had violated league rules by hiring amateur players to play against. When the NFL found out about this soon after, they made the Badgers owner sell his team. But for the Cardinals, other than the player that hired them, who was banned, they got off pretty easy. The Cardinals owner, Chris O'Brien, claimed he did not know about the scheme, and it seemed like everyone was in agreement that the game would be stricken from the records. However, the NFL just never did this. In fact, that game is still a part of the official records. So in a controversial move, the Chicago Cardinals would be awarded the 1925 NFL Championship over the Pottsville Maroons. Many have questioned how the league could strip the title from Pottsville for violating league rules, yet award it to the Cardinals Cardinals, who also violated the rules, in probably a much worse way to be honest, as they actually cheated. But it seems the NFL president, Joseph Carr, was more spiteful towards the Maroons because they directly defied him. For what it's worth, the Cardinals refused to accept the championship. In fact, it seems their late season scramble to add more winnable games wasn't in an effort to overtake Pottsville in the standings, but rather to entice the Chicago Bears to play them one more time, who were a lucrative draw with some star power. The Cardinals owner felt it wasn't right for them to claim the championship over a team that had rightfully beaten them. However, the Cardinals were sold to Charles Bidwell in 1933, the same Bidwell family that still owns them to this day, and he had a much different view of that 1925 championship than O'Brien did. They began to claim the title, and to this day, the Cardinals are officially considered the 1925 NFL champions. As for the Pottsville Maroons, they would be reinstated the following season and finish third in the standings that year. Unfortunately, the next couple seasons would be lackluster ones, and they would move to Boston for 1 year to play as the Bulldogs before disbanding completely. A team that is now mostly forgotten to NFL history, save for that 1925 season and a supposed curse placed by the residents of Pottsville on the Cardinals franchise. You may know that the Cardinals are the oldest football club in the NFL, yet they are historically one of the worst when it comes to postseason success. This has led many to believe the team is cursed, and there seems to be a pretty strong case for it. As punishment for stealing and falsely claiming a title that rightfully belonged to Pottsville, the curse of the Maroons will not allow the Cardinals to win another championship. Indeed, the Cardinals have not won a Super Bowl, and aside from that 1925 championship, they only have one other NFL championship in 1947. Now, you might say that that alone makes the curse invalid, but there's something odd with it too. In a cruel twist of fate, 1947 would be the season right after Charles Bidwell passed away, the same owner that initially began to wrongfully claim the 1925 chip. So this means that he died a year before his team won one of its own, which seems a bit spiteful. In any case, that was the last time the Cardinals won a championship of any kind, and currently they have the longest drought in the NFL at 76 seasons. Now, each time the topic of giving the championship back to Pottsville has come up for discussion amongst the NFL and the owners, it's always ended up being decided to stay with the original decision that the championship belongs to the Cardinals, with really only the Pennsylvania teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles, arguing against that notion. So until everyone wises up and just returns the championship to Pottsville, the curse will remain in effect. I mean, that championship means way more to the people of Pottsville than it does to Cardinals fans, and until they get what's rightfully theirs, the city will continue to place its hexes on the hated Redbirds, ensuring their prolonged suffering. Now, I've been to Pottsville, huge fan of Yingling, but let's just say that the city could use a win, especially a championship. I'm willing to bet most Cardinals fans don't even know about this, and those that do you even give a shit about a century-old championship, or would you rather be able to compete for a Super Bowl now? Because I'll tell you, Pottsville remembers, and as long as you falsely claim what doesn't belong to you, they'll make sure you never get one that rightfully does. I think this is one of the most powerful and ancient curses in the NFL, and it's probably my favorite given the amount of lore behind it. This is a top-tier curse, and Cardinals fans, I don't know if God hates you, but Pottsville certainly does.